Heartfelt welcome to everyone. Someone was sharing that she'd been dealing and coping with depression, and she's been waking up to all the traumas after she finished with depression. She's been waking up to all the traumas that were stored inside of her. Another woman shared that she recently lost several of her loved ones and family to death, and they passed away. And not long after that, she ended up with stage 4 breast cancer. And so really wanted to get to what was emotionally co-creating the illness. Yet another person wrote in about fibromyalgia, and another one about arthritis and pains in knees and ankles and all the joints and autoimmune disease. And so we're going to be more focused, not just on the emotional things, because one woman, she wrote in and said that I feel like I'm holding myself back in life whenever I get an opportunity. Something's able to finally let my potential shine. I'm sabotaging myself. So she's aware that even though there's nothing physically wrong with her, that somehow there's this silent saboteur inside of her that is closing her down just when her potential is coming out. And there's a reason all of us are writing in, be it physical issues, emotional issues, mental issues. It's because of what science has been telling us about what goes on with emotions and our bodies. And one of the things that science has unequivocally established, that when you feel a strong emotion and you repress it, it releases a quantifiable biochemistry into the bloodstream, which will go to certain cell receptors and block those cells, rendering those cells incapable of communicating with the rest of the cells in the body. And if over time illness happens, of course, it happens in the region where the cells are blocked. And conversely, also what's known to be true is when we feel our emotions very naturally and openly like a child does, our cell receptors remain open. So they've established that there is very much a corollary between shutting down our emotions and them, that programming, that consciousness getting stored in our cells. And the journey, the method that was born from my own experience from healing from a basketball-sized tumor in only 6.5 weeks' time without medical intervention, was first born from my own experience. And what happened in 1992, I was diagnosed, even though I'd been in the field of personal growth, complementary medicine, certified in so many areas of wellness and complementary medicine. And I was living, walking my talk and living that experience of eating healthily, working out, meditating every day. And not only that, but I was in a marriage I felt myself to be deeply graced and blessed to be in. And so you could say that I was at a peak of my life and I was living my full potential. And the last thing I ever expected to have happen was to end up being diagnosed with this huge tumor. And it really sent me reeling. And it catapulted me on this soul-searching healing journey where I had to throw everything I knew about health out the window, everything I knew about healing, all of it out the window. And I was guided on my own download from grace, if you could put it that way, to discover what are called cell memories inside the body. And what science knew at that time, and I was so grateful for all the work going on in the field of cellular healing, is that not only did, when we repressed emotions, did it release that biochemistry into our bloodstream, which blocked particular cell receptors in a particular part of our body. But when that cell generation died, it passed on the programming, the consciousness, the pain, the unspoken words, everything that was going on at the time that you repressed it. All that programming got passed on to the next cell generation. And so the next cell generation was born as an exact replica of the previous cell generation. As a matter of fact, when I got in to see the doctor and she did all the exams, she said this probably started as one cell when you were 8 years old. And it was only for the months right before I got to the doctor that they started replicating exponentially. And by the time I got to her, I went from being my tummy just a little bit fuller to looking like I was 6 months pregnant, though I knew that wasn't the case. And so there was a lot of work going on in the field of cellular healing. But even though there was all this work going on, no one had given us a method. But there was one man, Dr. Deepak Chopra, who had decided to do a radical thing. Now, he was a chief medical officer for a hospital in Boston. And what he decided to do was to amass case studies of people who had healed without drugs or surgery, who had spontaneously healed, that's the medical term, without any drugs or surgery, without any medical intervention. He said, we know enough about what makes people sick and die. He said, I want to know what makes them heal against the odds without any intervention. And after amassing hundreds and then ultimately thousands of case studies, he could find that people who had healed without drugs or surgery had two things in common. One was that through some act of grace or spontaneous event, they actually got access to this that he called the infinite intelligence, the part of you that makes your heart beat, your eyes shine, your hair grow, your cells replicate. And the second thing that they had in common was through some act of grace or spontaneous event, they actually got access to what he called at that time the cell memories. And if somehow they were guided by the infinite intelligence to a specific cellular location and somehow spontaneously got access to that consciousness that was stored in the cells, somehow spontaneously released it, then when the new cells were born, they were born devoid of that old consciousness as new regenerative cells. Now, I knew all that. I'd studied with everyone. I was at the cutting edge of what was happening in the field of wellness and complementary medicine. At that time, I was actually giving the Living Health program for Tony Robbins, so teaching tens of thousands of people around the world how to create radiant health. And I was living, breathing, doing all the work that was available at that time. And yet, with all the research going on, no one had given us a method. And part of the huge gift of grace that my own healing journey is I was guided to uncover a way for all of us to get access to this vast field of peace, of love, the pure awareness, this infinite intelligence that is your own soul, that is your essence. And to be guided by that infinite intelligence to specific cellular locations to uncover these old repressed cell memories and go through a deep process of release and letting go, actually understanding what's happened to you in your life and coming to a place of profound forgiveness where you're forgiving life, God, other people who may have been involved in it, forgiving yourself, so that when new cells are born, they're born devoid of that old consciousness as new regenerative cells. And that was my own healing journey. And when I got into hospital 6.5 weeks later, and they did all the scans, I was pronounced textbook perfect clean, no tumor. And part of my own healing journey lay in finding a way to bring this work to the world. And I'm so joyous to know that it's being used by doctors and medical hospitals. When I first started offering the journey, it was in cancer centers because they were using the journey to get to the emotional corollary of what co-created the illness in the first place. And right now, even as I speak, there are 3 hospitals in Israel where after you've gone through heart surgery, you go into a recovery center where then you undergo the journey method in a week's recovery to uncover what co-created that illness in the first place so it doesn't show up later and the same thing come back, because you didn't find the emotional reason why it got created in the first place. And the same is true for the oncology unit in another hospital. And again, after you've undergone whatever treatment has been prescribed, you're welcomed into the recovery center. And they found that people go into remission and stay in remission. They did hundreds of case studies over the years, and they're astounded at the results of how people don't have to go through that whole healing process again. Same with multiple sclerosis. And so they're really getting to what's co-creating the illness in the first place. So many of you wrote in about that you have these illnesses or emotional issues and you're aware they're operating and that you're really longing to get to the emotional root cause of what is contributing to the illness. And one of the things that we've learned in life is that not only do these emotions get stuck in our cells, but that life triggers us. It's been in turmoil for these last many years, and it's been driving to the surface all these unmet issues, and people are longing to find a way to really come to a place of peace inside themselves. And so the journey method is known both for taking you on a journey inside to get to the peace inside and to clear whatever emotional blocks, whatever old trauma is here, whatever stress is shutting you down, whatever lids of depression you've put on yourself, so that this radiant peace, this love that is your essence, can finally live your life.